What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is my 2025 riding mower lawn tractor style buyer's guide and comparison video between $2,000 to $3,000 price range. I'm going to be covering the critical information like the engine, the deck size, deck thickness, transmission style, all that important information, and show you the price difference and how just a little bit of extra money can get you a much better warranty, a much better mower, maybe a thicker gauge deck, and things to look out for on each model. Each one has their pros and cons. I am not a brand loyalist. I'm just going to be providing you guys with the critical information that you need to make a well-informed decision. So guys, I even made a spreadsheet showing all the critical information. We got the price, the deck thickness, the engine, horsepower, what type of battery, fuel tank size, turning radius, the forward and reverse speed, the transmission, maximum cutting height, minimum cutting height, and the warranty, as well as customer reviews. I think you're going to be surprised. I got the brand and the models here covered up right now. You're going to be surprised which one is obviously the top pick. And I'm going to have a link in the description of where you can print out and look at this spreadsheet yourself. So the first mower I want to show you guys is the Murry MT100. And the only reason I'm putting this one in here is because it has the lowest price, starting out at $1,899, so basically almost $2,000. So I figured, why not go ahead and include it. Now, it comes with a 13.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine. Has a 1.4 gallon fuel tank. It's rated for 2 acres. Has a forward speed of 5.5 miles per hour and a reverse speed of 2 miles per hour. The cutting height between these on this mower is 1 inch to 4 inches, and it has 13 cutting height positions. It does have a review rating of 4 out of 5 stars, but guys, I am not going to recommend this mower. You know, they're not very well built. They're kind of cheap. It's a stamped deck. It actually, I believe, is a 14 gauge deck that they use on this, and everything really just feels cheap, honestly. One thing that I really don't like is the transmission. It's not a hydrostatic transmission. It's a manual transmission. So anytime you have to put it in forward and reverse and let out on the parking brake, you know, it just takes a lot of impact on the transmission, and you can see there how that fuel throttle it just felt really cheap. Now it does have a lithium battery with a fuse right there, easy to get to. But what I was going to say about the transmission is when you have to put it in and out like that, it's kind of hard on these transmissions, and I could not find what type of transmission this is, but I do know it's made in China. All right, as well as that's what this sticker says here as well, the label, made in China. Does have a metal body, but like there again, right here on the right side, you can see the belt engagement right there, and then you have the 13 positions, cutting height positions. But guys, again, I'm not going to recommend this one. And then you also have the MT200. And this comes at a price range of $2,099. So $2,100 basically. It has a little front bumper there, which is okay. Kind of cheaply made looking, nothing impressive. But we still have a single cylinder Briggs & Stratton. I hate single cylinder engines altogether, especially the Briggs & Stratton single cylinder engines. They're notorious for having the compression release braking. I've done a video on that. Other YouTubers, mechanics have done videos on it. Who knows if it's fixed for good now? I doubt it. I recommend you stay away from them. And these only have a 2-year limited warranty on it. Like I said, the only good thing about these, they do have the lithium-ion battery, has a little sight gauge indicator. But I just don't like the transmission. I don't like that they're made in China. Everything feels cheap, and the turning radius is 18 inches, which is bigger than all the other mowers that we're going to be looking at for the rest of this video. So this is a recommend from mechanical mind a do not buy, stay away from these mowers. So next, let's take a look at Cub Cadet. And guys, I want to tell you, ever since Stanley Black & Decker bought out MTD 100% in 2001, all the MTD made mowers have drastically increased in price. And starting out at $22.99, we're going to take a look at this LT42 IP. And that IP stands for Intel Power. Now, a lot of people like this. I'm going to show you what it is. This is not fuel injected like their snow blowers and things. This is actually still carbureted, but basically it's a throttle by wire. So it's no metal cable, manual cable. You have a dial here, so it's a throttle by wire. Now, I personally do not like that idea, but this has probably one of the best reviews of all the mowers we're going to be looking at, of a 4.9 out of 5 stars. This one has, as well as all of the Cub Cadets we're going to take a look at, has a turning radius of 16 inches. The deck is a 13 gauge stamped deck, again 42 inches. The cutting height ranges from 1 inches to 4 inches, and you have 12 cutting positions. Now, one thing I do like about the Cub Cadet decks is it has those metal spindle covers. I like the seat, very well made seat. And as you on all the Cub Cadets, it has a 210 cold cranking amp, 8GM, that stands for absorbent glass mat battery, which these do last longer than the wet lead acid batteries do. The transmissions that they use on this mower is a Tough Torque TL200 hydrostatic transmission. Gives you a 5.5 mile per hour forward speed and a 3 mile per hour reverse speed, and that speed will be consistent throughout all the Cub Cadet mowers. If I fail to mention it on the future mowers that we look at. But there's your settings. You got 12 deck positions, and again with a range of 1 inch to 4 inches. And currently, my personal lawnmower, riding tractor style lawnmower that I use, is a Cub Cadet. It's a 2016 model, and I like how it has this button here for the reverse where you can run the blades in backwards. But watch out for, just when you're looking at one, just see how that hood's cracked. That's probably just from people popping this hood to look at that Intel Power engine. And one thing I will say before we start looking at this next one here at $24.99, the 46 inch with a 22 horsepower Kohler engine, is that the Cub Cadets have the best warranty out of all the ones that we're going to be looking at. A 3-year unlimited hour warranty, and then you have 5-year unlimited hours on the front axle, the frame, and the deck has a 5-year, on this particular model, it's a 3-year unlimited warranty on the deck. Easy to change the oil on this one. And also on these, on all the Cub Cadets, it has a 3-gallon fuel tank. And I do like the steering gear. These are high quality steering gears on these mowers as well, as opposed to like the John Deere. I don't really like the John Deere steering gears as much. And guys, until we get into commercial mowers, I really don't lose any sleep having a Kohler engine versus a Briggs & Stratton. I just don't like the single cylinder Briggs, but I do like how you got the manual choke and your manual throttle cable here. Again, we got the AGM battery, 210 cold cranking amps. You got the fuse right there, the main 20 amp fuse. If you ever turn the key and nothing happens, check that fuse first. And the transmission on this one, again, this is the LT42 with the Kohler engine, and you can't find this on the website, but that transmission is the same TL200 as found on that other one. But again, 5-year warranty on the frame and this front axle. You got the Zerk fittings there for the grease, easy to get to. Some of the mowers don't have that. I like that a lot, where you can grease this stuff to make it last longer. This Home Depot didn't have all the available Cub Cadets that Home Depot offers. So let's go ahead and move on to the John Deere's, because I just want to give you some basic information before we do the side-by-side comparisons, because we're not done with all the Cub Cadets yet. But real quick, let's take a look at this S100. Now this is John Deere's coming in at $23.99, and you get a whopping 17.5 horsepower single cylinder Briggs & Stratton. This is in my opinion, a do not buy. I was a John Deere tech for many years. Well, I worked for a John Deere dealership and had John Deere training. So I know these mowers very, very well. Now, one thing I want to point out, when you're buying them from the store, one of the most common things is this fuse might be gone, but also the battery connections are often loose. I'm going to get to this more a little bit later in the video. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now. John Deere is the only one that has actually a technician from a dealership come and do the PDIs, the pre-delivery inspections on these mowers. And I used to do those. But real quick, while we're here, you got those plastic spindle covers. This S100 has a manual fuel gauge right there that they hardly ever work properly. And the other higher end models have a digital fuel gauge. And anytime it has just the single throttle that kind of has the all-in-one choke and fuel throttle in one, I don't really like those. I do like the deck lift and the seats on the John Deeres. However, these seats are notorious for mildewing. But one thing I hate about the John Deeres is that they have the gas tank underneath the seat as opposed to the battery. The transmission that all these John Deeres use in this price range that we're going to be covering is the TLT200 transmission as opposed to the Cub Cadet TL200. It's an interchangeable transmission. They're exactly the same. The fan is just different, just a reverse fan. But it is a hydrostatic, just, it's not a, manual shift. And this one has the blade engagement lever on the dash as opposed to on the fender. Now this particular model, it has an easy oil change drain tube right here where you can just drain it and it misses the frame. And when the S models came out, for some reason, John Deere, in normal John Deere fashion, when they find something that works, they mess it up. They want to screw it up, and they had notorious issues with the belts coming off. They do have grease fittings on the front wheels there, on the caster forks there. I'm sorry, the axle forks. But again, on those belts, they had that plastic belt guide, and for a while they were just having problems with the deck belts coming off. Hopefully they have solved that issue. There was all types of special instructions they were giving us, and we were always having problems with the deck belts coming off on brand new machines as opposed to the D and E models in previous years. But I do love the handle. This is probably the best deck lift. It has 13 positions, and the range is 1.25 to 4 inches. Now, as you move on up into the different models, you got the S100, the 110, 120, 130, 140, and 160 is beyond our price range of this video, but I may cover it as well. They all are Briggs & Stratton engines. Now, one thing, Briggs & Stratton catches a lot of flack about these engines. They're great engines, honestly. The only thing I don't like is the plastic intake. These lights, they're kind of a pain to replace. I've made a video on that. But also, one thing I hate about these mowers that they messed up is this Easy Change oil filter. It costs $50, and it only changes 1/3 of the oil. Now, I have made a video, I'll put a link down in the description. For less than the price of that oil filter, you can go back to the regular oil filter, conventional oil filter, for about $30. I've got all the parts listed needed to convert it back. And from then on out, your oil and oil filter change will only cost you about $20. And you change all of the oil instead of 1/3 of the oil. I got a better seat on this model as opposed to the little low back seat. So as you move on up into the higher end models, and they all have 300 cold cranking amp batteries, which is a higher cold cranking amp, but it's a wet acid battery. And on this one, you get the little cubby there. You get the cover like they don't provide on the other models. And just pointing out the parking brake there, as if suppose that one does not have that. I'm sorry, cruise control. Cruise control. Has the cruise control there on this S120, and these also have a digital fuel gauge, which is pretty nice as opposed to that manual fuel gauge. The decks on these are 13 gauge. They're all 13 gauge until you get up to the S140s and above, then you get a 12 gauge deck, but they're all stamped decks. All this will be a lot easier to understand, and you'll be able to get a good, direct, fast comparison between all these models by looking at the spreadsheet that I'm going to have. But one other thing is, even though a John Deere tech does do the PDI inspection on these mowers, even when they're sold at Lowe's and Home Depot, a John Deere tech is paid by John Deere. John Deere pays the dealership to pay the technician to come out and do the PDIs, take them out of the metal crate, and we crank them up, make sure everything's working right. None of the other brands do that. So if you're getting it delivered to your house, you're probably going to have to assemble some things on the other brands, and they'll come in a kind of a metal crate. But be careful which store you buy them from, because as you can see, as I've been walking around pointing out this one, these have been left out in the sun, not taken care of very well. You got the hoods already fading and things like that. It's just, very dirty. People will sometimes think they're used when they've just been sitting outside. It really just depends on the management of that store. This one just looks filthy, dirty. So just buyer beware of where you're buying it from and what dealer you're buying it from, okay? So here at $28.99 is the S140. Got a bumper on the front, 12 gauge deck. You still get the 22 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine. Everything else is the same. The battery, the fuel tank is smaller actually. It's 2.4 gallons, smaller than the 3-gallon Cub Cadet gas tank. But what's strange about, even though you're paying $2,800 for this S140, even though you do get the electric PTO like on the S130, and you get the 12 gauge deck, you don't get the digital fuel gauge. You get the manual fuel gauge, and you don't get the cruise control. And you're still getting the little light duty TLT200 transmission. So before we get to our spreadsheet, let's go ahead and take a visual look at the Craftsman mowers. This is the T100 at $17.99. And what I do like about these is they have a metal hood as opposed to all the plastic, like the fully plastic hood on the John Deere. And this one has the 11.5 horsepower single cylinder Briggs & Stratton. I do like the way they run that muffler there, but that's pretty much all I like about this one. It's got the little small 1.3 gallon fuel tank. It does have a metal body there, most of them do. A 14 gauge stamped deck, which is probably the thinnest out of all of them. Very light duty. I'm not going to recommend this mower. There's several other things that I don't like about it. No deck wash there. And it does have metal belt guides. They're not fully spindle covers there, not covering the top of that spindle. Manual transmission, low back seat. The steering wheel feels pretty cheap. The throttle feels really cheap. Just a lot of things I don't really like about this one. And as we come around, you can see the 5-position deck position height that you can have. This one has the little mulching cap there that you can put that chute on. I believe that chute comes with it. And as we come around, we're going to take a look at this T110 that has a 17 horsepower Briggs & Stratton, and it has a 13 gauge deck. But one thing I don't like about it is that drain plug. When you go to drain the oil, it's going to get all over the frame, and plus these don't have an oil filter. These little cheap, one-cylinder engines don't have an oil filter, so it's going to wear out faster, not filtering out that oil. And over here, here's a T2400. which is a pretty significant upgrade because now you're getting a 12 gauge deck. It's $26.99, 46-inch 12 gauge stamped deck. You got a 23 horsepower Kohler engine on it. You get the 3-gallon fuel tank. Just a much better option as opposed to that T100 and T110. And this one has the 5-inch turning radius and also a front bumper, like I said. Let's take a look at this engine. I'm sorry, did I say it's a 22 horsepower Kohler, not a 23 horsepower? But the oil change, it's got an oil filter, and you got the easy, quick drain plug there for changing the oil. It's not going to get all over the frame like on the other one. And for that extra money, you're getting a much better seat as opposed to this little low back seat on the 100 and 110. Still getting that AGM battery, but this one has a much better charging system, as you'll see later on the spreadsheet. I got all this information on the spreadsheet. Now let's take a quick look at the T3200, and I've heard a lot of people rave about this one. You can notice right away it's got much bigger tires. It's coming in at $31.99, 54-inch deck. That's an 11 gauge, but it's still a stamped deck. You got an electric PTO, 24 horsepower Kohler engine, 3-gallon fuel tank, still got that 5-inch turning radius, and 3-year limited hour warranty with the front bumper. There's that 24 horsepower Kohler. Gotta love that. Oil filter, easy to change. Oil, same turning gears as like the Cub Cadet because it's an MTD brand. This one's got 3 blades on the deck since it's a 54-inch wide deck. Plastic spindle covers as opposed to the metal ones on the smaller decks. And here's a quick look at the control panel or dash instrument panel. Manual choke, manual throttle, electric PTO, pretty much identical to the Cub Cadet and Troy-Bilt. All right guys, so in past videos I have done a lot of comparisons where I've had sheets of paper and everything, and I've gotten where I'm now a high-tech redneck, okay? I've got a Google spreadsheet and I've added a lot more information than the sheet that I showed in the beginning of this video. And one thing I want to say is I had a lot of viewers say, hey man, you really need to look into Craftsman mowers. They've really upped their game a lot. Now I know Craftsman, Cub Cadet, and Troy-Bilt are made by MTD. Now MTD, Modern Tool and Die, had a really bad reputation in the past of building cheap products. And I can get into that in a whole nother video, but just to summarize that, it'd be like, okay, so one thing that I do is, in addition to being a mechanic, I'm also a fabricator. I have a small business where I make products for trailers that landscapers use. So if they come to me with a product and or a need for a certain thing, like say a rack to hold their trimmers or something, and they say, I only have a budget of $100, that is going to be far cheaper. That rack is going to be far cheaper, or whatever product it is, house, whatever, versus if they were going to say, okay, I want a rack that I'm willing to spend $500 on it. So basically, Modern Tool and Die, MTD, was outsourced, manufacturer that these companies would come to and say, hey, we have a budget of this is what we're trying to do, and everything else. Well, what happened was Stanley Black & Decker, who actually is a really good company and is a very big company, owns a lot of other companies that like DeWalt and other quality made products. They bought out 100%. They did have 20% of MTD, and then they bought out the remaining 80, and I believe it was December of 2021. And I can promise you, times change, things change. The quality of the MTD products, that's parent company now is Stanley Black & Decker. You got to look into it, all the things that they own. The quality has drastically increased. And what I'm about to show you on this spreadsheet is even shocking me. I mean, because I saw Cub Cadets and things, and I'm like, man, they used to be kind of junk for a while. They used to work high quality back in like the 70s and stuff, and then they really tapered down, and now it's I'm just showing you information here. You can't. I'm not a brand loyalist, like I've said before. The facts don't lie. These are just, it's just like math. I mean, I'm going to show you some information that even I am shocked when we compare it to like John Deere, for example. You're going to look at this, and I'm going to make this spreadsheet available for you guys, where you can print it out yourself or just download it yourself. I'm going to try to. I don't know how to do that yet, but I'll probably have a link down in the description where you can look at this spreadsheet and download it yourself. But real quick, I'm going to zoom in the camera because I'm not advanced enough to know how to screenshot everything, but I'm going to zoom it in, and I'm going to show you the information because I've got Craftsman, Troy-Bilt, Cub Cadet, John Deere, and Husqvarna. And real quick, the Husqvarna website and stuff, it was so hard to find Husqvarnas in the stores. They're no longer in Lowe's or Home Depot. I even went to a dealership and they had one riding lawn tractor, and it was like a $5,000 one. Okay, so there's like companies like I think Blaine's Farm and Fleet, which aren't down here in Florida. They're more up north. I can't find any Husqvarna riding lawn tractors around that are within this price range. So I was strictly able to I was trying to just get information off the websites, and it was so difficult because they very vague information that I even called them, chatted with them, and I have some information here, but I don't even feel confident that they were knowing this was 100% accurate information as far as like the gauges of the deck. But our main contenders are going to be John Deere, Cub Cadet, Troy-Bilt, and Craftsman. And again, I'm leaving Murry off of this because I don't recommend that you buy a Murry. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you what I found. I think you're going to be shocked as well. All right, guys, so at the top I have, it's not in alphabetical order, but I have Craftsman at the top, and I have the T100 and the R110, which is a little, looks like the Forrest Gump little snapper mower. Troy-Bilt and Cub Cadet have basically the same one, and if you're interested in that, it's got a 30-inch deck, which is very handy for getting into tight spaces. I will do maybe a separate video on that one, but spoiler alert, if you're going to get one of those, get the Cub Cadet. It's got the better warranty, even though they're all made by MTD. So let's go ahead and start with this price range of this video. I know it said $2,000 to $3,000, but I'm going to go ahead and just cover into the $3,200 price range a little bit here. So first off, we got these Craftsman, and as you can see here, again, another MTD product. And I got the prices right here, and I got it where I got deck size, deck thickness, the way the engine brand, horsepower, number of cylinders, all the way over here to fuel tank size, the type of battery. Some of the information, like this blank right here, I wasn't able to find, like the charging amps, but a lot of them I did. So we're going to compare all that, even though these are the same. Like you'll see, the turning radius on the Craftsman is incredible. So that's why I have that highlighted. It's only a 5-inch on these models, the 2200, the 2400, and the 3200K models. And as we look at this, just stick with me here. We're going to see some very interesting stuff here. All right. So we got our price range right here. And if you're, so for example, the T110, if you jump up, $600 more, you're still getting a 13 gauge stamped deck, manual PTO, but you're upgrading from the Briggs & Stratton 17 horsepower engine to the 20 horsepower 2-cylinder 20 horsepower Kohler engine, and you're getting a 3 gallon tank as opposed to a 1.3 gallon tank. You're getting the absorbent glass mat battery. I'm sure I wasn't able to confirm the charging amps, but since these are Kohlers, I'm going to assume they're around 12 amps. So that's going to recharge that battery a lot faster versus having one of these with only 3 amps charging the battery after you've cranked it up. And I even have on here the forward speed and the, let's do that, turning radius. We got forward speed and reverse speed here. So you'll be able to look at all this, and so all these little other ones, these cheaper ones, have a manual transmission, where these have the hydrostatic transmissions. It's a lot better. It's easier on the transmission. I also got the minimum cutting height, the maximum cutting height, how many positions. So how many positions you can select between on these, the 22, 24, and 32. You got 12 positions versus just 5. But all of the Craftsmen have a great warranty, a 3-year limited hour warranty. And I've also put the customer reviews. Now, these customer reviews were either found on Lowe's, Home Depot, or the actual Craftsman website, or Cub Cadet, or whatever the manufacturer's website, which I would look and I would usually compare, and they were usually right on the money with each other. And this one right here, the Craftsman 2400K, got the highest review out of all these mowers that we're going to review here on this spreadsheet. But bear with me, we're not it's not the one that I would actually suggest. Now, you're kind of limited to, like, okay, if you want the 46-inch deck or 54-inch deck, so look here, you can get the 54-inch deck on the 3200. Now you're getting an 11-gauge deck, but it's still stamped, okay? You have the electric PTO engagement, you got a 24 horsepower Kohler now, still a 3-gallon tank, got the tight turning radius. The best turning radius goes to the Craftsman out of all the other brands. That's why I have it highlighted as well. Okay, so let's roll on down here to Troy-Bilt. Now, this is where I was going to leave Troy-Bilt completely out of it until I realized, oh wait, they're made by MTD, and that's owned by Stanley Black & Decker now also. So they're probably very similar to the Cub Cadets. And I promise you're going to see some Cub Cadet information that's going to blow you away, okay? So just stick with me here. So on the Troy-Bilts, you have the Broncos. I'm not going to look at the ponies on this one. We're just going to cover the Broncos models. So on this 42-inch, you got the Bronco 42. You're starting out right at the $2,099, so $2,100. You're getting a 13-gauge stamped deck, manual PTO engagement, a Briggs & Stratton, only a 19 horsepower Briggs & Stratton, 1-cylinder, which I hate. I hate the 1-cylinder Briggs & Stratton engines. The small little gas tank, and you're getting, gosh, this is something to do this. It's 135 cold cranking amp battery. Okay, so as opposed to down here, when you get into the other ones, you get a 210 cold cranking amp AGM battery, just like you get on all the Cub Cadets that we'll look at in here in just a moment. So then once you can step up to the 46-inch deck at a price range for $2,200. So now just $100 more, you're getting a 12-gauge deck with going up to the 46. Now, not everyone, it's always surprising to me how people think in the comments that their situation applies to everyone on the planet. Some people want a 42-inch deck or a 30-inch deck. They need that to get maybe through a gate or something. So, you know, this spreadsheet is going to let you guys pick the mower that's going to best fit your needs, and you're going to see what is important. Like, what's most important on these mowers is deck thickness, the transmission. Not as important as the mower, except I just like avoiding the 1-cylinder Briggs & Stratton. The Kohler engines are great, and the Briggs & Stratton 2-cylinder engine is great that are used on these. Only thing I don't like about the Briggs & Stratton 2-cylinder, especially on the John Deere's, they got the Easy Change oil filter, like I mentioned before, but they have that plastic intake. But the Kohler engines, I think I would choose, if I had to choose one or the other, I would go with the Kohler over the Briggs & Stratton engine there. So let's continue on. So another, like I said, $100 difference. You're going from a 13-gauge to a 12-gauge deck. Still got the little 19 horsepower 1-cylinder Briggs & Stratton. You still got the small gas tank and all that. 3 amp charging rate, our forward speeds, all the same. Turning radius on these Troy-Bilts are 18 inches. Okay, so notice this as we come on down to you got like, say this one for example, the Bronco 46B. And let's compare that to the 46K fab. Okay, so a price difference of $400, same deck size, except you're getting an 11 gauge fabricated deck with an electric PTO. Now you're getting a Kohler engine as opposed to the 17.5 single cylinder Briggs. You're getting the bigger fuel tank. Let's slide on over here. Getting the bigger fuel tank. You're getting the bigger battery. 12 amps on the charging system is 12 amps. Tighter turning radius at 16 inches. Forward speed and all that is still good, but here is the kicker. Here's the kicker. And this is going to help Troy-Bilt, Cub Cadet, and Craftsman beat John Deere. They have the Tough Torque K46 hydrostatic transmission, which is a much heavier duty transmission as opposed to the TL200, which is available on the lower end Cub Cadets, but it is the only transmission on the John Deeres. And just real quick, the TLT200 as opposed to the TL200, they're interchangeable. The only difference is the fan is reversed. That's the only difference. They're the same transmission basically. But going back up here to compare this at a $400 difference, like I said before, a $400 difference at this Bronco 46B versus the 46K fab. Again, 11 gauge deck versus 12 gauge, fabricated versus stamped, electric PTO, Kohler engine, all that good stuff. Bigger gas tank, bigger battery, charging system, much better transmission. Now it said on the website, it just said Troy-Bilt. It might be the TL200, but I couldn't find the information. It just said Troy-Bilt. And one other thing I want to point out, just popped in my head. They are trying to claim that this is a automatic transmission. It's not. You have to shift it into forward or reverse. I consider that to be a manual. That's why I've put manual on there. So don't get in the comments saying, well, they're saying it's an automatic. It's not. Residential warranty, I got on this spreadsheet, you'll see how it changes between the models. Like, for example, on this other one that we have, it has a 3-year warranty on the deck shell, limited 3-year warranty on the engine. But when you get down to the Kohler engine, they don't give a 3-year, they give a 3-year warranty on this engine, a 2-year warranty on this engine, no warrant, it's basically a 3-year warranty on the whole thing, but it doesn't specify an engine warranty on these. So this is going to be a lot of useful information. I forgot to put the customer reviews on this one, but bonus features, cruise control is available on these. Now, one thing I want to point out, this 46K fab versus the 46K fab XP, I could not find any difference other than the XP models are a different color. These are red and these are black, or real dark gray. Same price, everything's the same. But like I was saying earlier, the big difference you want to watch out for if you're shopping for one of these is not assume, okay, I'm getting the 46B. You want to, if you're going to spend that, go ahead and spend another $400 and you're getting a much, much better mower. Now, if you wanted a 50-inch deck, they also have the Super Bronco 50K fab, and they also have a Super Bronco 50K fab XP that's just black. All these stats are just the same. But with this one, on that 50-inch, you're looking at $27.99, so $2,800 basically. You're getting an 11 gauge fabricated deck, 24 horsepower engine now. Everything else is the same, okay? You're getting a heavy duty transmission, all that stuff. So Troy-Bilt is definitely, I can't even believe I'm saying this in 2025. I cannot believe the way Troy-Bilt, after the acquisition of Stanley Black & Decker taking over MTD, the quality of these mowers have just gone really skyrocketed in quality in a good way. So now let's move on down here to Cub Cadet. You got the LT42 IP, which that's that Intel power, the thing I don't like where it's a throttle by wire. And one thing I found interesting is I couldn't find on the Cub Cadet website the regular one. anymore, the LT42. Still available in a lot of stores, but I couldn't see it on the website. Now I have noticed they changed them. They'll take stuff down and do it. I have a website too, and sometimes I can modify that stuff too. But anyway, what you'll notice here is that IP, I might have that wrong. It might be a 12 gauge deck. I'm not sure. I might have that wrong. I'll have to double check. But $100 difference on that IP versus the regular manual, traditional, conventional, manually operated cable is what I'm trying to, think of. But you're getting a Kohler on that regular one. If you could still find it, one cylinder Kohler engine, 19.5 horsepower. Again, I don't really like the one cylinders anything, but all the Cub Cadets come with a 3-gallon fuel tank, the 210 cold cranking amp battery. They all come with a 16-inch turning radius. Now these models here, the LT42 and the LT46, you're stuck with the TL200 transmission. And I'm not saying that's a bad transmission, but this is just a much better, heavier duty transmission. And all these mowers, you can attach wagons and sprayers and things like that, which is really great. Now, notice over here when we get to the warranty, while I have these highlighted, the LT50, the ST54, and you'll notice here I have the Cub Cadet XT2 instead of the XT1. Let me show you why I have that real quick. Let's see here. And I just have these bars here just to kind of separate the brands. I added this one, the XT2, because it's recently had a price drop, so it's right in. If I'm going to cover the $3,200 ones, I went ahead and put that one in here because it's now $3,049. And on these models here, the LT50, the ST54, and the XT2 LX model, the 42-inch deck, you can get 11 gauge. So if you're wanting a 42-inch deck and you want a heavy-duty mower, but you still want a 42-inch wide deck, you can go down here and spend the $3,049, get the XT2, and get an 11 gauge fabricated deck. However, since it's a lower end on that XT2 model, you're getting the manually actuated PTO, which honestly I don't mind because it's just simpler and less things, easier to repair if something goes wrong versus these electric PTO clutches. Personally, for me, I don't let the electric PTO clutch be the deciding factor on a mower. But you'll notice here, so we got this price. So we got the 24 horsepower mower, a horsepower engine on that ST54, 24 horsepower on the LT50, all right? Less money than this one. That XT2 with the 42-inch deck only has a 20 horsepower engine, all right? So this is a lot of useful information that you might think like, okay, I'm automatically getting these features as I increase in price, where it's not necessarily true. Okay, so as we come along, again, 3-gallon tank. Now we get the big transmission, the K46 tough torque transmission, and I have 12 cutting positions. Also, real quick, I got the minimum cutting height and the maximum cutting height labeled on all these because they do change. Like on the Troy-Bilts, it's only 1.5 inches to 3 3/4 inches, but on all the Cub Cadets, except for this one, it was 1.5 inches to 4 inches, but it's usually 1 inch to 4 inches. 12 cutting positions on the Cub Cadets versus like the Bronco 46B, like I was saying, buy this one instead of that one. You got 5 cutting positions as opposed to 12. But look down here on this Cub Cadet, the warranty, the best warranty out of all of them. You got the whole warranty, like bumper to bumper, in other words, is a 3-year unlimited hours. That's crazy. As opposed to like the John Deere, only has 2-year 120 hours. Which one would you rather have? And I can promise you, John Deere doesn't have a warranty on that deck shell front axle. Look at this, 5-year on the frame, unlimited hours, 5-year on the front axle, unlimited hours, deck shell, limited lifetime. Best warranty. I will let that be a deciding factor. In my opinion, that is a huge deciding factor. Also, bonus feature, recent price drop. I've got those are the recent prices, and just keep in mind I'm shooting this is April of 2025, so things change, guys. So if you're watching this in 2026 or 2027, some of this information has probably changed. These all have cruise control. All right, so now let's look down at the John Deere's, which is very disappointing in my opinion. We can look at I get it, I love John Deere, I wish they were doing better. We got the S100, 110, 120, 130, 140, and I went ahead and include the 160 in here at $199. You got a 13 gauge deck up until you get into the $2,900 price range. You're stuck with a 13 gauge stamped deck. Whereas up here, you can easily get into a 12 gauge or even 11 gauge fabricated deck for, like right here, $2,650. I'm already an 11 gauge fabricated deck, versus John Deere, that's not even an option yet. Okay, unless you were to get into probably the like the X300 model. John Deere is much more expensive, but a whole different ball game, much better mowers. We'll do another video on that. All Briggs & Stratton engines. Again, I'm not opposed to any of the Briggs & Stratton engines. I've worked on, look, they've all had their problems. Kohler's had problems with on the EFI commercial mowers with crankcase pans cracking. Kawasaki engines, which aren't available in any of these mowers, but everybody's like, oh, Kawasaki has their engine problems too. Anytime I would do a head job on a Kawasaki, I'd sit there and beg and pray that the threads don't come out with the head bolts. Big problem with the Kawasaki's on that. So anyway, moving along, the John Deere, more disappointing news. We've got a smaller fuel tank. I will tell you in a moment why I don't like the fuel tank being underneath the seat, but it's a 2.4 gallon fuel tank. We have just the regular it is a higher cold cranking, 300 cold cranking amps, but it's just the traditional wet lead acid battery. Smaller charging system, only an 8 amp charging system as opposed to 12 amps available on the Cub Cadets and the Troy-Bilts, at certain models, like the one I start recommending there, the Bronco 46K. And even the Craftsman has I don't know what the Craftsman is. I'm assuming it's probably around a 12 or 8 amp charging system on those Kohler motors on the Craftsman. Biggest turning radius, 18 inches. All right, speed's about the same as the other ones, a little bit faster in reverse. Got the rinky-dink little 200 transmission. Cutting height, same as always, but you get one more cutting position. That's great, but 2-year, 120 hour warranty. That's pretty disappointing. And again, Husqvarna, or however, I don't care how y'all want me to say it, I'm going to say it the way I want to say it. Husqvarna, it's spread Husqvarna, blah, blah, blah. I'm an American, I'm going to say Husqvarna the way I've always said it for 30-something years. So, 2.5 gallon tank, Briggs & Stratton motors. They emailed me and they said this one has an 11 gauge deck and this one has a 10 gauge deck, and then we go back up to an 11 gauge deck. And I'll show you the message they sent. I'm not sure they're confident in what that is, because they're like, we'll have to get back with you on that. We don't really know. And it was just so hard to find the information. It was hard to find the mowers. It just said tough torque on the transmission. I don't know what brand or what model I should say. Customer reviews were all kind of low. I like Husqvarna, the ones I've had in the past and worked on, but if I'm going to buy a new mower, it's definitely going to be either a Craftsman, Troy-Bilt, or Cub Cadet. Now, one thing I will say, the Cub Cadets have LED headlights, as opposed to these have like the conventional headlights. This one, the John Deere, has conventional, just regular headlights, not LED. I'm probably going to go for, if depends on what my price range is, and then also depends on what the deck size that I wanted. But if I was wanting let's say I was wanting a 42-inch deck and I had $3,000 to spend, I'm going to go with this one, the XT2. and get that 11 gauge fabricated deck. I don't care about the electric PTO. It's not a deal, a game changer for me, but I'm going to get that heavy duty transmission and that outstanding warranty. And I just don't see any, I'm getting a good charging system. I'm getting the 16-inch turning radius. If you need the 5-inch turning radius and you want, still a great warranty, it's just they don't clarify. If I could see nowhere where they clarified if you got a deck shell, 5-year deck shell or whatever, unlimited out warranty on the on these. But if I was wanting a 54-inch deck and I'm willing to spend $3,200, it's going to be a tough call between this 32K, but this is a stamped deck right here, the 11 gauge stamped deck versus the is that a stamped deck? I'll have to, if I'm wrong, I might have to change that. It seems weird that they'd have a stamped deck on this 11 gauge at that price where all the other ones are fabricated. But for less money, also on that Craftsman, let's see, what transmission did we get? It might have that better transmission. I may not have updated it. So, you definitely want to get that heavier transmission, that K46 if you can, and you definitely want to get as thick of a fabricated deck if you can. All right, so there it is, guys. Hope you'll like this information. It took me a long time to gather all this information for you. As I want to say, I'm not sponsored by anyone. I'm not sponsored by any of the brands or any of the stores or anything. Takes me a long time to gather up all this information. I hope you all appreciate it. All I ask you to do is hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, most of these mowers, I'm going to have affiliate links in the View Products tab. So if you buy one of those, it won't cost you any more money, but what will happen is Lowe's or Home Depot will send me a little finder's fee that I'll see in about 3 or 4 months maybe, and that will help support the channel because I do a lot of this in my little spare time that I have. I do have I'm a mechanic and I have a little small business doing the welding stuff, so it really means a lot for you just to like the video, share the video, subscribe, leave a comment. I apologize if I've gotten anything wrong here. It takes a long time to edit these videos. So just, check out some of my other past videos. Got a lot of helpful videos as far as repairs and things like that. I just really appreciate the support you guys have given me, the awesome comments that I get, and just have a great day, and I'll have more videos like this coming soon. Thanks for watching. All right, guys, so real quick, the reason I like to have the gas tank underneath the hood as opposed to like on the John Deere's where the gas tank is underneath the seat is because one of the most common reasons that these mowers will start running badly or stop running at all is because dirt and debris gets into the gas, or the gas goes bad after sitting over time, especially over like winter storage. Gas goes bad. Think of it as like milk, not like just, most people think, oh, gas, it'll last for a year. Now, it really kind of depends on the region of the country you're in and everything. But down here in Florida, 3 months, this gas is questionable. I recommend always running ethanol free if you can get that for several reasons. One, it has a longer shelf life. It's better for the engine, and also the ethanol gas will kind of dry rot rubber hoses from the inside out. But one thing about these gas tanks that's underneath the hood, it's just so much easier to clean it out. I could remove this tank easy if I don't have a suction gas pump type of thing. Versus the John Deere, it's a freaking nightmare to remove that gas tank. Now, you can get a suction and all that and suck it all out, or remove the fuel line on the John Deeres like I've shown in videos and drain all that gas out. But if you have dust and debris and dirt inside of that tank, you'll have to get like one of those little telescoping, or not telescope, but those little tools that has a little claw on the end, and you can take a rag and kind of wipe it all out. But it's just much easier to clean out the tank when it's here. Now, one thing I'll mention, people will say like, well, my dust and debris is not going to get in my tank. Well, what happens is these create a vacuum as the gas goes down. Even if you have a tank ventilation like this one does, a lot of times the caps the ventilation, but sometimes those kind of get clogged up over time. But another thing that will happen is the rubber seal on the gas cap will kind of wither away. On the John Deere's all the time, I would see them inside of the tank after time. You look down inside of that gas tank and you see these big, half circle pieces of rubber. It's the seal on the gas cap. And then what happens is, as that vacuum is created, as the gas is being consumed by the engine, the tank's going down, it's creating a vacuum and it's sucking in all that dusty and dirty debris air, and it's going right into your gas. And these mowers are in a very bad environment compared to like a car. It's dusty and all that stuff, so it's more prone to get into your gas tank. It's one of the most common reasons. Contaminated gasoline, old spoiled gas, but dirty contaminated fuel tanks is one of the most common reasons these riding mowers, whether it be a commercial mower, zero turn, whatever, or lawn tractor style, that's one of the most common reasons is bad gas or dirty gas. And one thing I do like about these gravity, it's kind of like a gravity fed, and I always like recommending putting a manual fuel stop shut off valve if it doesn't already come with one. And that way you're not depending on the fuel shutoff solenoid that's on the bottom of the carburetor, because just a little bit of vibration will cause that to leak gas by the carb into the combustion chamber over time. And I don't like to depend on those. I like to manually have a valve there that you can shut off as soon as you turn the engine off. Shut that off, and it's not going to let any more gas flow, even if your fuel shutoff solenoid is bad. But another thing is, if you're storing this for a long period of time, let the engine run and shut that off, and it'll burn all the gas out of the carburetor, and it'll store for a lot longer time. And that's what I always recommend doing if you're going to store it for winter. Shut it off and just let the engine just die. Burn up all that gas out of the carburetor, and then once that's done, turn the ignition switch off, and and then when you're ready to crank it up again, just turn the valve back on. Let give it a little bit of time. That flow, that gravity pressure will push the gas up to the carburetor. Wait for about 30 seconds after you've turned that up, and it'll crank right up. Because what happens is that gas will gum up that carburetor.